Welcome to Relationship Matters. Let's get going. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's great to have you. I'm going to hope people are jumping on. Hey, if you're getting this video notification, jump on with us and then share it with some other people. I know Facebook at least comes up with that. Hey, share with friends. Last week, I had a really important, I believe, an important teaching, and I've had amazing feedback from it. So thank you to everybody who's given feedback. And I really encourage you to not just look at this as one episode, or maybe you came across this today and you're listening to it, but I really encourage you to listen to all the episodes. I have fantastic guests. We cover a variety of subjects. And last week we talked about shame and how shame impacts our relationships. And so this week I was going to have a special guest on. I'm glad I didn't announce it because it didn't work out, but they will be on later. And so you'll find out eventually. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about parenting today and just talk about an approach that I have, and it's called strength-based parenting. Now, the good news is if you don't check out yet, if you're not a parent or you're not actively parenting right now, it applies to grandparents, but it also applies to workplaces. You can apply these principles I'm going to teach you about parenting to anybody you work with or anybody that you are in contact with. So the principles are universal. So don't check out just because it's about parenting. Some of my stories and stuff and illustrations will be certainly about parenting, but for the most part, I'm going to be applying them all the way around. And I just am really excited about today's teaching. Also have a huge announcement. Many of you know or don't know that I launched an online e-course, and it's going to be the first of many. I have plan on uploading at least 10 in the next year or so, and it's the first of many, and it's based on the book Relationship Matters that I wrote, and it's the first section of it. It's the 5 pillars of a healthy foundation for every relationship, and it is has worksheets with it. It has video training and whatnot, and so it's kind of the start to introducing the Relationship Matters ecosystem. I want to be able to provide the training. And here's the deal. A friend of mine, my best friend Chris, said to me a couple of weeks ago, like, I know your heart is to get this content out to as many people as possible. Why don't you adjust the price so that it's affordable to everybody? And so, huge announcement today. I've already put it into the comments. We are reducing it to $79. Now, everybody can come up with $79. I really encourage you, it's a great gift for your kids if they're adults or they're starting out in relationships. But I really want to encourage you. It's launched today. It's going to be $79. And so you've heard it first here. And I put the link in the comments, and so you can find it there. Now, I do this Relationship Matters podcast, live cast, because I really have a passion. I believe everything flows out of relationship, and I have a passion to help people strengthen their relationship with God, with themselves, and with others. And that's really my motivation. That's what I'm about. I know that is my calling in life, and so I'm really excited to continue to build this community. There's going to be all kinds of things that are coming down the pike to increase this ecosystem, if you will. So it starts by subscribing to either my YouTube channel or to the Facebook Relationship Matters page. So you're either watching on one of those two, so you've already joined the community. But I'm going to be starting to introduce groups and subscriptions and all kinds of other things are going to be coming down the pike. So just be watching for those. You can go to my website, markgordon.ca, and keep up there as well, and you'll find everything that's available there as well. So on to today. What I want to talk about is this concept of a strength-based approach, okay, to parenting, to leadership, to everything. Today I'm going to focus in on parenting, but it will also cross all other gates as well, as I've already said. So first of all, I want you to comment, even if you put, hey, that you're with me here, so I know you're with me. Maybe you comment, say hello. Maybe you can ask questions. I will answer them. They come into the studio here, so I'll be able to answer your questions today, and or have comments. Add to the content. I want this to be a community of learning. So we're all teachers. We're all learners, and so let's make sure that we do that. And so by all means, go ahead and pop in comments, either questions or comments to add to the conversation, and that would be awesome. Listen, today is very complicated in our world in terms of raising kids, in terms of even just life in general. Relationships have become very complicated. You would think the technology would have made them simpler, but it's not true. It's actually made it much more difficult. And the reason I decided to talk about this today, by the way, because my guest didn't work out, was simply because I think it's so important to have this conversation, because this week alone, I've had a couple of conversations with people, clients, who are really struggling with parenting stuff. They're struggling with how to manage the information that kids have access to today and how it shapes their thinking and shapes their minds. And so I want to just, I'm coming from that approach. And so we're going to be sharing some information today, and hopefully it'll be a help to you. I want to remind you, last week we talked about this water bottle, if you remember. And if you haven't watched that, go back and watch it. It's a great training on how to overcome shame. But this water bottle represents our heart. It represents the essence of who we are, our personality, what we're made, how we were created in the image of God. But we were created with a few inherent things. One is that we all want to love and be loved. Everybody wants to be significant, and you get significance through being loved and also loving others. So we all want to love and be loved. The second thing is we all have gifts and abilities. We all have gifts and abilities. Everybody has gifts, and we all have hopes and dreams. And I believe gifts and abilities are given to us to live out those hopes and dreams, and also to express and receive love. So it all goes together. The last one is the desire to succeed. I think everybody is born with that, because we are created in God's image. We are created with that inherent values within us that we need. When it's not met, when we don't experience that, of course, what happens is, if you remember, I said we put walls up around our heart. And so I want to build on this for this week about parenting. You see, your kids are also this represented by this water bottle, and they have this pureness to them. The younger they are, they have this pureness of their personality. Remember, we talked last week on the shame podcast, and please go back and listen or watch. And remember, I was talking about that, how we are so, when we're young, we're just so pliable, and we're just so innocent, and we just receive and give love so freely. My grandkids are amazing, and they just have such a way of making me feel special and expressing love to me, and vice versa, right? I can't wait to tell them how awesome they are. And so that's what we're doing. This is the person that we are dealing with when you're dealing with your kids. But here's the problem. What you might be bumping into is maybe some of the walls they've put up around their heart. They're experimenting with behavior. They're experimenting with independence. They're experimenting with what the boundaries are, how far they can push them, and all that kind of stuff. So what happens is we get into this tug of war. And what that tug of war does is we tend, as parents, to default to behavior modification or behavior management. But I'm going to give you some tools today that can circumvent that need. I'm going to give you some tools today that's going to help you not get into the power struggle, not get into the power fight, but to nurture that part of them that has gifts and abilities, love, and then they want to be loved and be loved, and that desire to succeed. You can tap into their heart, and speak to their heart. And you always want to do that. Now, it's okay to set boundaries. Some parenting today, like they just think removing boundaries is a form of love or a way of showing love because maybe you had, really harsh boundaries. I always say you want to set boundaries, not build walls. You see, when we attack our child's behavior, when we connect their behavior to their personhood, what we do is we're building walls, right? We're building walls. And so we don't want to do that. We want to actually we want to put boundaries in place so that this can flourish. So so they can, as a person, as a human, and by the way, if you're listening to this later, it's a water bottle I'm showing. And it's, because water is, we can't live without water, and we're made up 80% of water. And so if you can't see, that's what I'm showing. And I'm putting a set of cardboard walls around that water bottle to illustrate this. And so I want to just to say that what we want to do as parents or managers, leaders of organizations is we want to nurture that part of them that wants to succeed, that has gifts and abilities, that has hopes and dreams. Because when we do that, we're going to get the behavior will change on its own. And that's really just a fact. And so that's why I do that. So the strength-based approach was initiated. If you remember quite a few episodes back now, I think it was my second or third episode, I had Dr. Wayne Hammond on, and he was fantastic. Go back and watch that episode if you can. It was fantastic. And Dr. Hammond spoke to this idea of strength-based approach. How do we help our kids flourish? How do we help them really flourish in life? So if we're just behavior management, we're not going to really do well. That goes for anything. If you're leading an organization and you're just trying to modify behavior, it just doesn't work. Jack Toth, my very first guest, who is a very close friend of mine, says this. He said, success doesn't just happen. It takes strategy and investment. Unless we make the investment in our children, they will wander aimlessly about, influenced by whatever seems the loudest for their attention. That's such a powerful statement by Jack Toth. It's so true. If whoever influences your child the most is going to be the one who directs their lives, and so we want to do that relationally, of course. There was a study done, and there was actually experts, came up with this study in a book called Teen Trends, and it said that the three most important things to people, and particularly teenagers, are freedom, friendship, and being loved. Those are the three most important that came out of that whole survey. And it's interesting because the message that the young people I've heard give over the years that I served young people was that they want to have a good relationship with their parents. It might feel the opposite. It feels like they're driving you nuts. They might be turning your hair gray, but they actually want a good relationship with you. They're just fighting against the boundaries of life. And so we don't want to build walls. We want to build boundaries, but we want to do it relationally. That's what this whole show is about, is relationships. They also want to know that they're valued. I can tell you from personal experience, they will be far more motivated to do what you've asked them to do if they're coming from a value place or where they feel loved and valued, than when it's a punitive place or where you're trying to, make them do something that they want to do. And they also want to know that they are heard. So they really want to know that you care enough to listen and to hear their hearts. And that's so important. So important for them for us to realize that. So what the experts are saying are most important is the relationship with an adult based on trust, mutual respect, and non-judgment, and caring adults interacting with kids on issues that are relevant to them. So we had Darlene Unruh on a couple of weeks ago, and she was just fantastic. And that's what she said, those 1,000 little conversations, those moments when you're driving along and you just ask questions to find out where their heads are at, what they're thinking. That's a relational model. That's a strength-based model that allows those children to feel heard, and then they'll have connection with you. And then it's far easier to get them to do what you need them to do. I love this quote. It says, when a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. Isn't that true? If our children are having behavioral issues, now this is apart from diagnosed, brain injury or brain emotional brain health emotional health. So like if there's ADHD, there's autism spectrum in there. Of course, that we still want to use a strength-based approach, but you got to be more patient in it, and you've got to be more appropriate to what the child can handle in it. But it still works. But I'm talking about the everyday average kid that might have some behavioral issues, and so that's kind of what I'm talking about today. Or like I said, at work, if you have somebody with behavioral issues. So, what does a kid that's flourishing look like? If we want the strength-based approach, what we want is our children to flourish. And so, what does that look like? Well, first of all, they feel confident, they have optimism, and they're probably empowered. You can tell they're empowered. You'll see that they're confident to do things or take risks. You're going to see that they know what they want to do, and they really go for it and work it out. They're probably perceptive, respectful, and sympathetic towards feelings of others as well as their own. So they show signs of empathy. That's what a flourishing child does. They'll care for their little brother or their little sister. They'll show care for the family troubles or struggles. They'll notice when mom or dad are off a little bit, and they'll be curious, and they'll be wanting to help. Now, of course, this is all age. I'm not focusing in on one age, but this is generally principles that work whatever the age. The application might change with the age. They have learned to set realistic goals and expectations for themselves. So they're not always trying. They'll try new things and they'll try to stretch, but they're not taking really super risky behavior where they could be hurt or whatever. They have developed positive coping strategies, and they're growth orientated in their aptitude. So they tend to find positive ways to cope with stress, cope with anxiety and stress. Now, listen, we know that today children deal with anxiety and stress far more than any other generation has. Now, that's relative, because I'm sure if somebody, is watching and you were in a child in World War II, you might disagree. If your city was being bombed, kids in Ukraine right now might disagree with me. And it's true. When there's that kind of crisis, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying in North America, in the average day living with social media and the pressures that the media messages say and friends say, that is created and produced more anxiety than ever before. And so we as parents are to facilitate opportunities and ways for our kids to calm. So when we see a kid flourish, we know that the parent's investing in them. They're investing time, they're investing energy and conversations with them. And so you can see that happen. They see challenges as opportunities to learn from. They see mistakes as a way to learn and grow in their potential. Now, I know, listen, all these things are very idealistic. They're very like, yeah, wouldn't it be nice if every kid was like that? No, listen, there are variations to this, and I understand that, but this is the goal. This is what we want to reach for. I think we've set the bar too low. I call it the, everybody participation ribbon generation. Everybody gets a generation. We've set the bar too low to our expectations. Children are super resilient, and they're super smart. They can adapt and learn so quickly. And so let's not underestimate them. Let's not treat them in a way that we underestimate their abilities. We need to be realistic and manage our expectations of what they can and can't do. But I think we need to also, see the best of them. And that's what we want to do. They're aware of their limitations, but they use strengths as a starting point to cope with in positive ways. So those are just some, here's two more. They present a competent, self-motivated, and persevere when faced with challenging situations. So that's they present as competent. They're able to finish tasks, finish their homework, do things that they've been asked to do. They have effective interpersonal skills and are empathetic and can seek out assistance and nourishing from others. So they're loving. They care. And so that I just wanted to give you a picture of that's the big picture goal. And that's the results that you'll see from a strength-based approach. Now, the earlier you start the strength-based approach, the better. So if you're sitting here saying, well, where were you 10 years ago? Where were you 15 years ago? Yes, I know. It's hard to sometimes bring change, but it's not impossible. Kids' brains are still forming, even up to 25 years old. their brain is still adapting. And even beyond that, we can change neuroplasticities. As we learned last week, we can actually retrain our brain. So never give up and stay consistent, for crying out loud. Stay consistent, but don't give up, and know that there's lots of help out there if you need it. So just want to remind you, comment, ask questions. If you have any questions, by all means, even if you're watching a rebroadcast of this or listening on a podcast, you're always welcome to send me questions or make questions in the comments. I get notified of comments and then I'll respond to you myself. All right. What do we want to do? We want to, where do we want to go here? Now, there's a cause and effect to everybody. So if you can picture with me an iceberg, and you see a little tip of the iceberg above the waterline, and then you see a big, mountain of an iceberg below the waterline. Above the waterline is behavior. It's what you see your child doing. Now, that behavior can be positive or negative, but it's all you see. What you don't know is what's going on below the surface. It's what's really going on. So let me put it in the two contexts. When you see negative behavior, it's not just because your kid's trying to drive you crazy or give you gray hair. It's just not the way it is. If you see negative behavior and poor behavior, what's going on is something very different under the surface. And our job as parents, and this is the same, by the way, for a team. If you see a team member not performing or not behaving at an appropriate level, you got to know there's something going on beneath the surface. They're not just doing it because they're a jerk or they're trying to frustrate you. There's a cause and effect for every human being. We have a cause and effect. And so I just want to encourage you that when you see negative behavior in your children or in a coworker, it's because something else is going on. And our job as parents and leaders is to actually find out what's going on. We want to dig beneath the surface to find out what's causing the behavior. Because when we do that, we make a connection with the kids and with our coworkers. We make connection with people that will earn the right for us to speak into that what's below the surface. So if you think about that iceberg, what I want to do with my children, what I did with them growing up, is I wanted to invest in what was below the surface, so what was above the surface would just take care of itself. Does that make sense? It's like the flower illustration I just said, that quote. If I could work on the flower, if I think it's, needs fixing, and I'm always dealing with the flower is the behavior. The root system, the dirt, the soil, the nutrients in the soil is what's going on beneath the surface. And so if what's in the ground is not healthy, the flower won't be healthy. So our job as parents is to create an environment that flower, that ground that the flower is growing in, that environment that the children are growing in, can flourish. Now, that's the same for an organization. If you lead it, you want to create good soil so the people in your organization will grow and they will be healthy. Then their behaviors or their decision making will actually reflect what's going on beneath the surface. So if you see somebody off, you know that there's some nourishment needed below the surface. If you see somebody on and you see them performing well, you can say, wow, you could even ask them, what is it that's nourishing you right now that I can see this behavior? So you can start to really look at your children and start to realize what's going on. There's always cause and effect. And the strength-based approach looks for what's going on beneath the surface. A punitive approach or a justice approach or a judgment approach looks at what's above the surface and tries to correct it without taking into consideration what's beneath the surface. When we do that, we actually build walls around our kids' lives. That's how your walls got there. That's how your walls got there, is because somebody didn't nurture what was beneath the surface, your heart. They only dealt with the behavior, what was above the surface. And that is a real problem. And so I really want to encourage you that that's the strength-based approach, is to look at what's beneath the surface. Now, pain, I'm going to tell you why. The pain-based behavior is a pain is a powerful motivator that permeates emotions, thinking, and behavior. So painful emotions, for example, that's inner states of fear, anger, sadness, disgust, hopelessness, helplessness, guilt or shame, hatred, all of those things. If it's pain-based behavior, those are what the emotions are. So that's what's going on beneath the surface. They're feeling one of those emotions. They're feeling fearful. They're feeling hopeless. They're feeling frustrated. They're feeling angry or shameful. That's what's going on beneath the surface. So if you can tap into that and help them with that, guess what? Excuse me, you're going to have a much better result. Painful thinking then, right? If we have feeling and then the thinking, painful thinking may include distressing thought processes such as worry, anxiety, distrust, pessimism, blame, vengefulness, denial, unconstructive rationalization. So when your kids are being super irrational, that's what's going on. There's painful thinking happening. If there's painful thinking, there's already painful emotions below the surface. Excuse me again. Should have had a glass. I should have had water I can drink. This is so old. I wouldn't drink it right now. So, and then what happens is if they have painful thinking, is they're going to have painful behavior, pain-based behavior. And that, what puts painful emotions and thinking into action as an attempt to escape from the pain. You got to realize your kids are doing the best they can with what they have. They're not mature enough. They haven't, learned enough, grown enough to understand their own feelings. Listen, we as adults sometimes don't understand our own feelings. So how is a child supposed to? So what we want to do is we want to help them process that. We want to process that with them. So as you can see, there was a pattern there. There's a feeling, and then there's a thought or, about that feeling, and then there's a behavior. What we want to do is most parents, we deal with the behavior level. We're always going to that lowest common denominator or what's above the surface. And what happens is we'll never actually solve it. All you'll get into is a power struggle. You're going to get into this power mashing all the time with your children because you're dealing with behavior and you're trying to match your behavior with theirs. So in other words, they escalate because you are escalating. Many times a child will escalate because you're escalating. And so you want to be able to don't get into power struggles with your children because you will not win. What you want to do is get beneath the surface and understand what's going on in the heart. I can say the same thing again about your work world. If you have somebody who has got painful emotions, their thinking is going to be painful thoughts, what's going to happen is you'll have painful behavior. Those are the ones that are going to cause disruption. But if you can get beneath the surface, instead of trying to correct the behavior, get to the heart of things, get to the emotion, then you've earned the right to make the adjustment in their thinking. And that's called reframing. So what you do with your child when they're emotional and their behavior is out of control is you need to connect with them first. You need to nurture that emotion that they're feeling sad, that they're feeling angry, that they're feeling whatever, and identify that and show empathy towards that. I'm sorry you feel that way. And then you make the connection first. Then you talk about what's going on, why are you so frustrated? Once you know that, then you can introduce the idea, listen, I know you're frustrated, but throwing trucks at your brother is not okay. Throwing your toys at the walls are not okay. That's where you can start to reframe and then maybe introduce the idea with them. A strength-based approach would say, what do you think are some ways you could handle that frustration in a different way, and kind of go back and forth. Again, this has got to be age appropriate, but you go back and forth. Well, think about what I just said about kids, and you can apply that to adults as well, right? You want to identify, affirm their emotions, identify what's going on beneath the surface. Then you can start talking about reframing the thoughts. So they might say to you, a child might say to you, well, my brother took my toy, he won't share. So that was their thinking. I'm hurt. I feel sad because I'm frustrated because my brother took my toy or he won't share his toy with me. And so, I just got upset. And so I needed, if he wasn't going to share my toy, I took it away from him and then I threw it at him. So it's rational to a child. Hey, if you won't play with me or share your toy, I'll just take your toy. It makes sense to them. They don't know any better. You're the parent, you got to teach them the difference, but identify the feeling first, then deal with the thoughts. Then you will see the behavior. You don't even have to talk about behavior, by the way. If you do this in the right order, you never actually have to worry um, about their behavior. Kids go from feeling to behavior because their prefrontal cortex of their brain has not developed enough. So it's a parent's job to help the kids develop thoughts. So you got to think about that. Kids work primarily out of the primary part of their brain. They're just all emotion, straight, like, from emotion to behavior. They don't always put a lot of thought into things. And so you, as a parent, facilitate that. You help them think it through. You help them find out what was going on. And that strength-based approach, what you do is you come to an agreement with them on what the boundaries are, and then you're not building a wall around their heart by getting angry at their behavior. If you're always trying to behavior modify, you're going to build walls around their heart. And the word discipline actually is a derivative word of a Latin word that means disciple. So it comes out of a word, disciple. What is disciple? Disciple is leading others. It's training others. It's raising them up, in the ways of God. It's training them what they should think about things. It's helping them make better decisions. That's what discipline is. It's not punishment. It was never designed to punish people. It's designed to restore them. I want you to hear that. Your discipline, when you discipline your children, it should be restoring them, not punishing them. Punishment does not work. You're going to get into a power battle because you're always going to be at a behavior level. So what you want to do is you want to be able to bless them, to work with them, and to find out what's going on beneath the surface. I hope that makes sense. So to give you an illustration, kind of, I guess, is when our feeling is I feel rejected, then the thought might be I'll do anything to be liked, and then our behavior will be I'll please others so I fit in. And so we become people pleasers in this illustration, right? Because that starts with our feeling of feeling rejection. So our thoughts are we got to do anything to be liked, and we would do things that we would never normally do. We talked about that last week in the shame lesson. It's like we would do things that we would never normally do. And so we want to make sure that we do that. But if our feeling is we're accepted and loved, then our thought is I can be myself and everything will work out. Then my behavior is I'll treat others with respect and I'll do my best. You can see the contrast there. So when you deal with what's beneath the surface of what's going on in their heart, then you're going to do much better. I love this quote. It's basically kids do what it takes to survive. Given their current level of response to stress or change, people always use their best problem-solving strategy to get their needs met, even if these strategies are dysfunctional. Now, that quote applies to adults too, but especially children. They do what works for them. So their learned behavior, if you teach them which buttons to push in you, because you're in a power struggle, they're going to push those buttons until they get their own way. And then you're not doing them any favors. And then you're going to stay in the power struggle. If you can just love them enough to find out what's going on beneath the surface, you'll earn the right to maybe give them another strategy to think about. Maybe they'll then listen to you and they'll ask you, and maybe they'll actually apply what you say because you've taken the problem a little deeper. All right, I'm going to jump through a bunch of this. A couple other quotes. We are not fixed. We are work in progress. Judith Glaser said that. I like that. We are not fixed. We are a work in progress. Your children don't need to be fixed. Stop trying to fix them because that's what's going to cause more problem. Just love them, encourage them, affirm them, invest in them, spend time with them. I would say quality time happens within quantity time. That's what we can do. And so I hopefully that kind of inspires you and helps you a little bit. All right. So maybe we could see all individuals as at promise rather than at risk. That's a fundamental shift that means facilitating rather than fixing. Dr. Wayne Hammond said that. I really like that. I'm going to say it again. To see all individuals as at promise rather than at risk is a fundamental shift that means facilitating rather than fixing. Boy, is that a mouthful. I could do a whole hour just on that sentence. It's so true. It's so true. If you're watching today, and you can apply, like I said, you can apply this across the board at work or at home. If you can see people as that promise, if you can see they're doing the best they can with what they have, you will earn the right to be able to then help them reframe their thoughts to bring out a better result. It just totally makes sense to me all the way around. And so, really want to encourage you with that. Um, all right, here's a good one. Here's the characteristics of a strength-based parent. Okay, so if you're wondering, you're taking notes. And by the way, I haven't seen any comments or questions. Come on, let's join the conversation here because I'm by myself. So who wants to be my co-guest today? My co-host. All right, here we go. Characteristic of a strength-based parent, and this could be a strength-based leader, strength-based manager, strength-based friend. Strength-based husband or wife. Parents who engage in the process of raising flourishing children develop a certain mindset and understanding of the essential strategies for developing the components of resilience. A strength-based approach is essential. So what we're to do is we're to help our kids build resilience. That's the job of a parent. And that's what a flourishing parent looks like. They are basically helping their children flourish by building in things into them, investing in that what's beneath the surface, in building resilience in them. So when above the surface happens, they know what to do. They can make better decisions. They can do the work that's required under the surface so they have better outcomes above the surface. And I tell you, this has been proven over and over. And by the way, it's been proven scientifically because through the Heroes Project in Calgary, when I worked with Impact Society and Jack Toth, Dr. Wayne Hammond did an empirical evidence testing cycle with the children we were working with, and we saw this work. We saw this work. So anybody who's a mentor, a leader, a parent, you apply a strength-based approach, you will see a change in the people that you're working with, and especially your children. It takes time, though, and it takes consistency. And so I just want to remind you of that. So here's a couple more things. You can write all this down if you want. But here's the mindset of a strength-based parent. So here's the mindset. Put the parent-child relationship before directing the child. So you put the relationship ahead of the discipline. You put the relationship ahead of the behavior. That's a mindset of a strength-based parent. You develop the ability to demonstrate empathy by putting themselves in the child's shoes. So a mindset of a strength-based parent or a strength-based leader is they put themselves in the other person's shoes, even if it's a child. You got to start realizing like they're not going to react like you do because they don't have the same experience as you do. So you got to slow down a little bit and say, oh, I wonder what's going on. I need to feel this with them for a minute so that I can help them through this emotion. You will see a huge change in your relationship and connection with your kids when you stop fighting them and you start working with them. Communicate effectively and listen actively. So active listening is so important in this. It's one of the 5 pillars of a healthy relationship's communication. And one of the communication pieces is active listening. So that's really important to this. Understand the need to change negative scripts. Have the insight and courage to think about doing things differently. So that's the mindset. They understand that they need to change negative scripts. And so, but that is a process and that they can do that. They focus on and acknowledge the positive behaviors more often than the challenging ones. I'm going to say that again. They focus on and acknowledge the positive behaviors more often than challenging ones, avoiding harsh criticism and negative comments. So in other words, you catch them doing good things instead of always seeing what they're doing wrong. And I'll talk more on that in a few minutes. All right, here's another one. Provide resources and learning opportunities for children, explore their interests, gifts, and natural abilities. You know, I've always said we are facilitators. My son, when he was young, wanted to play in the NHL, and I didn't know if he'd ever make that goal. I mean, there's only 32 teams and 2 goalies per team, so it was, but I was never going to tell him he wouldn't. My job as a parent's not to do that. My job as a parent was to build under the surface enough that if it didn't work out, he wouldn't be so disappointed that he couldn't function in life. You see the difference? I mean, it wasn't my job to tell him whether or not he should dream about being in the NHL. My job was to prepare him if he made it or if he didn't make it. Did he have the character? Does he have good decision making skills? Have I facilitated all that he needs? So I got him hockey skating lessons. I got him on a hockey team. I facilitated. I bought all the equipment he needed, and he wanted to be a goalie, of course, and so that's why it's the even makes it even harder. But I facilitated that. I got him the best, coaches and trainers. I did everything I could to facilitate his dream while never telling him he wasn't going to make it. Because I didn't have to tell him that. He would figure it out. If I taught him how to make sound decisions, I taught him how to have integrity, taught him how to process disappointment, then I didn't have to worry about whether he made it or not. And so, of course, he didn't. He got drafted in junior A, but he was playing in a band as well and loved music and ended up going that route. And to this day, makes a full-time living through music by teaching and playing. So there you go. What if I had crushed his dream? What if I'd said, oh, don't be silly? Or what if I'd said, you're not behaving good enough today, so you don't get to play hockey anymore? Like I punished him. I don't know what would have happened. But I know that I wasn't perfect, that's for sure. But I know that approach won in the end. So they accept their children for who they are and help them set realistic goals and expectations. So I did that. I wanted him to pursue his dreams and whatnot, but I helped him along the way understand what it would take to do it. And if it didn't happen, that if he did his best, that he'll be okay. And he was. And my daughter's the same. My daughter played soccer, my one daughter, and same idea. Did everything we could to facilitate, and never dashed her dreams about being on the women's Canadian soccer, team and whatever. But she didn't end up doing that. But she played soccer into her adulthood and always enjoyed it. So you can see what I'm saying there. Support connecting children to other positive relationships and adult role models in their school, community, associations, peer environments. Now, in today's age, that's a bit scary. So you do have to do diligence and you do have to be involved. You can't just turn them over to other people. But I know it really valued my family, my kids, when they had coaches, youth leaders, children's workers, whatever, other caring adults spoke into their lives. But I was involved enough and connected enough that I could protect them because, yes, there is harm out there that can happen. And yes, I know some people even watching this may have experienced that. And I'm so sorry you did. That you never deserved it. You should never have been hurt, for sure. But as you don't want to be in a knee-jerk reaction to that and then withhold opportunities for your kids because you went through something. So we want to make sure that it's tempered, that we do due diligence, that we are active and involved in having ongoing conversations with our kids. Then we never have to worry about that. We can actually help them. Help their kids. So mindset of a strength-based parent, they help their children experience success by identifying their strengths and discovering different ways of applying them in successful ways. So I just really love that. There's a bunch more, but I think I'm going to skip over those. So I want to just jump into, I'm going to end today with just some clear principles that will help you do that. So if you're taking notes, make sure you write these down. And still nobody making comments or questions. So I'm not sure who's watching, but say hi even just so I know you're there. All right. I want to remind you of something. Your kid's job is to invite you to do yours. Your kid's job is to invite you to do yours as a parent. And I always tell parents, if you parent them when they're young, they'll be your friends when they're older. But if you're their friend when they're young, you probably won't have them in relationship when they're older. Now, that's not absolute, but for the most part, we don't want to give up parenting, but we do want a healthy relationship with our kids. And you can have a healthy relationship as a parent. You can still enjoy some of the benefits you would have uh, uh, as friends, but you're still their parent. And so, really encouraging you to realize that if you're struggling with your children, if you're struggling with their behaviors, they're just inviting you to do your job, and that is to look beneath the surface to help them. You use a strength-based approach. So, I want to give you some strategies, or what strengths-based parents do differently. Okay, so I just want to do that. So, unlike a traditional parenting approach that focuses on avoiding risk and fixing negative behaviors, the strength based parent approach focuses on relational interactions and capacity building strategies that will strengthen a child's ability to flourish and meet life's challenges with thoughtfulness, confidence, purpose, and empathy. While the journey of each child is shaped by several factors from the society and culture they're raised in, there are some critical principles and ideas that influence and direct the strength based approach to raising competent and resilient children. So I'm going to share those with you right now. And so strength based parenting is built on the foundation of encouragement and on the belief that kids are resilient and can thrive when they feel safe, connected, and loved. There's your three magic words: safe, connected, and loved. And so that's really important. So here they are. I'm just going to give them to you point blank. I'm probably not going to go into a lot of detail in them, but I want to give them to you before I close off my time with you today. Number one, see what's strong, not what's wrong. Focus on what's right and why it is right, and tell them that. That's a beautiful way to have a strength-based approach. See what's strong, not what's wrong. Reframe some of those some of that negative language. In other words, maybe you see them, stop being so hyperactive. Maybe you could reframe that and say, hey, I see you have a wonderful strength of energy. Can we just now focus it, right? So you want to just change some of those things. Instead of aggressive, teach them how to be assertive. Instead of defiant, teach them how to be bold. You want to reframe some of those negative things and see what's strong in them. I love, you can tell them, I love how determined you are, but right now it's time to do this. You contrast it. So that's the second point. So number one, see what's strong, not what's wrong. Number two, contrast behavior with personhood. Too often we match them up. Example with my son, when he was younger, went through a lying phase. Never once did I call him a liar. What I said was, actually, your son, you have integrity, so why are you lying? I separated his behavior from his personhood. I identified what I saw in his personhood, and then I said, why are you behaving that way? So you want to contrast behavior with personhood. Otherwise, you're building walls around their heart. And we don't want to do that. So we want to contrast behavior. Number three, consistent consequence. Don't make promises you're not going to keep. I've heard so many parents say, if you do that again, I'm going to do this. Or if you do that, I'm going to ground you for a year. And of course, we never follow through with that. And it actually affects the relationship, or it affects your word. So your children aren't going to believe you with what consequence. The other thing is, with consequences, make sure they're relevant and they actually fit the crime, if you will. Now, hang on, my slides just went wonky here. So you want to make sure that you're absolutely allowing consistency in your consequences. So, and by the way, put equal effort into positive consequences. If they do something positive, make sure that the consequence of you find them what's strong, not what's wrong. Have a positive consequence that comes from that behavior, because you're teaching the kids that, I want to do more of that. But don't make promises you're not going to keep with them, and threaten. Also, make sure the consequences are measured to the offense, or at least related to it. So many times, you didn't clean your room, so you can't eat supper. What does eating supper have to do with a clean room? You got to find a consequence that's actually going to align with that. And so, just be aware that you want you to have consistency. All right, got to keep going here. Number four, let natural consequences teach not punish, not punishment. Sometimes we think our punishment is going to teach them a lesson. It does teach them a lesson. It teaches them what not to do. It teaches them that you can't be trusted or that they can't connect with you because shame comes into play. They feel like they're full of shame. And so you don't want to do that. What you want to do is let natural consequences. I always tell the story of my son who wanted to go to a birthday party and he mouthed his mom off. And she said, if you keep mouthing me off, you're not going to go to the party. I get home. Of course, he kept going. I get home. She says, deal with your son. And I talked to him and I lamented with him. I said, oh, I'm so sad. Why, Dad? I said, because you decided not to go to the party and I thought it sounded really fun. And he says, no, I didn't decide that. I want to go to the party. And I said, no, you made that decision the moment you mouthed your mom off. And you kept mouthing her off. And when you were disrespecting her, you made a decision not to go to that party. And so, that's not my decision. That's your decision. I'm not punishing you. It was your decision. That's a natural consequence of you being rude to your mom or being disrespectful. Interesting, eh? This teaches kids good decision-making skills. So when you let natural consequences take hold, they start to learn to make better decisions. So there you go. That's one thing to think. All right. Number 5, manage expectations, yours and theirs. Now, again, managing expectations can be a real skill set. But what I'm saying is sometimes we have an expectation. And if I don't have the slide, but I have a picture of a little kid driving or trying to drive a car with a big smile on their face. Of course, they can't even reach the pedals. You got to manage their expectations and yours. You need to understand that they can't process or think like you do. And so you got to ease up on your expectations of them and maybe bring yourself down to what they empathize with them and what they might be feeling so that you can actually manage your expectations. And then on the other hand, your kids are way smarter than you maybe give them credit for sometimes. And you have to manage their expectations, or they might be, having expectations of you that aren't real. They're just not rooted in realness. Like how many times have you heard, that's not fair? That's not fair, right? Well, actually, it is. It is. It's not about fairness, son or daughter. It's not about fairness. It's about natural consequence of your decisions. So there you go. There's that one. Number 6, encourage age-appropriate problem solving. Help them make a way, not get their own way. I'm going to say that again. Help them make a way, not get their own way. So what you want to do is encourage age-appropriate problem solving. So by asking questions, by, remember what I said a while ago, identifying their feelings, sit down with them, identify with their feelings, empathize, love them, comfort them, then start to reframe. And in that reframing process, you could ask them questions like, what else do you think you could have done to solve that problem? Or what are some other things you could try to make it work? And so that is really one way of doing that, is by making sure that, because what they're doing is they're learning how to solve their own problems then, and they don't have to come running to you every single time. Thank you, Allison. She made a comment, says, hi, enjoyed this video, excellent advice and examples. So thank you, Allison, for acknowledging that you're on and saying hi. That's awesome. So number 7 is identify with their pain, affirm their strength, and adjust behavior to match. Okay, I'm going to say that again. Identify with the pain, like I just finished saying. You comfort them, you identify with their pain, then you affirm their strength. You can do this, son. You can do this, daughter. You're a kind person. You're a gentle person. You love your brother. In my illustration of the toy, you're such a caring big sister or big brother, and I know that you love them. So that's affirming their strengths, and then adjust the behavior to match. But throwing a toy at them doesn't express that. They don't think that's not saying you love them, is it? What could you have done differently? And you start exploring that. In fact, I would say never withhold comfort. Never withhold comfort from your child, ever. I don't care how bad they're behaving, whatever's going on, never withhold comfort. I was dealing with an adult family one time with clients, and the daughter was getting married, and the parents were not approving of the guy she was marrying. And she said something in the session like, "You've never believed anything in, you don't never believed in me, or you've never liked my decision making or whatever." And the mom was astounded, like, "No, that's not true," and whatever. And they had a memory, the daughter had a memory of when she was 4 years old. She was doing something that mom didn't like, and she was felt bad, and she started to cry. She put her hands up for comfort, and mom turned her back, and uh, faced her back to her to say, "No, you don't deserve a hug. You don't deserve comfort." Now, listen, we all make mistakes in those moments. Like, listen, we're not ever going to be perfect, but something lodged in that little girl's mind that from that time on, that she was never going to be approved by her mom. So now she's trying to marry a guy, and they're not approving. So that's, "I'm not approving you again." So she was feeling she wasn't being approved. Anyway, we worked through it, and it was awesome. And they got married, and still are, and have beautiful family. But what I'm saying is never withhold love. Show love and connection first, then you can deal with whatever the problem is. This is so hard to do, parents. I know it is. It's so easy to get angry and frustrated. I know it's difficult to do this, but let me tell you something. You will never regret it. Discipline yourself. You're the adult in the situation. Be at peace. All these principles, by the way, can go for an employee as well. You can look at, and you could transfer all of this into that. In fact, I do teach that to leaders and to organizations. All right. Next and last one, connect before you direct. Connect before you direct. Essential to developing a child's resilience is connection. It's connecting with them. So always connect before you direct. It's really good to connect with them before you tell them you want to do something or want them to do it for you. Often in the hubbub of our busyness and life, go do that. And then they resist because maybe they're playing a game or they're doing something else. And then the fight's on. Connect first. Let them know why you want them to do what they're going to do. Children need to know that. And the more connection they feel, the more they're willing to do things for you. Our kids always had chores. They never had a time when they didn't have chores. But we used the chores as an opportunity for connection time as well. And we used it and connected and helped them see how it contributed to the whole household. And and they shifted their mindset about it. And we never really had fights about it. We had days where they were like, "Oh," I'm not saying they did never, it was perfect, but I'm just saying it always came through because you want to connect before you direct. Children need to know that will always be cared for and supported in consistent ways where they feel valued, competent, and confident about their future. Now, boy, you could put this into the work world too, right? When an employee feels valued and competent and confident about their future, they're going to stay with the company. So this is the same with children. Laying the foundation of secure, trusting, and loving parent-child relationship is absolutely vital to this whole process. And then children who trust and feel valued by their parents will value and embrace the guidance being offered. So true. I'm going to say that again. Children who trust and feel valued by their parents will value and embrace the guidance being offered. If they believe that you don't love them or don't care about them, or you're just out to make their lives miserable, they're going to react that way. They're going to act that way. If you're going to fight, if you're going to do battle to connect and preserve the relationship. Choose relationship over everything else. Yes, it means sometimes you're not going to get them to do what you want. Yes, it means there's going to be times when you have to concede something. But I'm not talking about just giving them their own way. I'm talking about connecting with them in a way that you've earned the right to direct them, and they trust you in that direction. That's really the key. So a strength-based approach. Remember, the word discipline is disciple. The strength-based approach is to facilitate. It's not to lord it over. Go for relationship first. Go for relationship first. All right. I think I'm just about done there. Embracing change, you want to embrace change for strength, for sure. Strength-based approach encourages change. How? It does not make statements. It asks questions and gives choices. Such a good thing. My daughter, I'm super proud of her with our grandkids. She picked that part of the lesson up really strongly, and so she gives them two choices. You have two choices. You can do this or you can do that. So the kid's still in charge, still in this feeling confident in a sense. They feel like they still get to make the choice. But here's your two choices. Mom is still determining what those choices are. And it's worked really well for them. And they're doing a great job with that. So make sure that you can do that. So here's the challenge. Is our goal to help our children only survive, just to get through life? Or do we want to be outcome focused where we continue to concentrate our energy on changing their behavior? Is that really what we want to do? We want to make sure that they just behave good. Is that our mark of a success? I don't think so. Or do we want to prepare them to flourish? Do we want to prepare them to survive, or do we want to prepare them to flourish? And then do we want to be outcome focused and just deal with behavior and deal with the externals, or do we want to be process focused and nurturing their capacity to navigate challenging situations and meet their needs in constructive ways? I don't know. I think the second way sounds better. We want to prepare them to flourish by being process focused. Don't take every incident, every situation that you have and think that it's the last chance to do anything or the last opportunity to change. You want to be processed. And so with that, I think I'm out of time. I hope that helped. I hope you wrote these down. You can go back and watch this again, write down the notes, take notes. You can, if you're listening on the podcast, you can always start replay or rewind or fast forward. It'll stay evergreen on my YouTube channel. So if you subscribe to that, you can go and look at this again. Maybe you have some parents in your circle that you think could benefit from this. Why don't you share the video with them? Be generous. It's free. I'm being generous by offering these things for free. So you be generous by sharing it out. And I know it's going to help them. And a lot of the other episodes, this is I just gave you the backbone to all the other episodes we've had really talked about in any terms of parenting. But also, like I said, this also fits with the workplace, and it fits with any relationship, any community of people. If we followed these 8 strength-based approaches, we would be able to really see results. And so I really am encouraged that you're going to be able to do that. I want to just finally, again, just announce that my online course, I've put in the comments. There's a link there you can click on to go and order it. Online course, 5 pillars of a healthy foundation for every relationship. And it has worksheets. It has it's a great course. And I've reduced it to only $79. $79. Anybody can invest that much in it. And so I really encourage you to go and order it. It's going to help you tremendously. It's great content, just like this has been. I know you're going to enjoy the content. And so go and order that today. You can go to my website, markgordon.ca, for anything else. If you want to do a blind spot assessment, I have that on there. It kind of just teaches you what blind spots you may have, what personality type you have, and whatnot. And you can do that there. You can order the course. You can buy a book. You can order my book off of through my website on Amazon or Kindle or all kinds of different places. So listen, lots and lots of resources for you to make sure you have healthy relationships. It's such an honor to be able to spend time with you and to provide this. And so thanks for joining me. Next week, I actually do have a guest, and actually the several next weeks. And I just know you're going to really enjoy your time over the next few episodes and stuff like that. So we'll see you next week. Take care. Great being with you. Thanks so much.